When your own flesh and blood looks at you as nothing more than a bank account, the pain is almost unbearable. After 40 years of sacrifice, my son looked me in the eyes and said, "You're going to give us half your money and this house, or we'll take it all." His words froze the air between us, turning 4 decades of love into a cold business transaction. He thought I was just a helpless old lady. The kind who'd cry and give in. The kind who'd be too afraid to fight back. But my son forgot where he came from. By the time this was over, he'd wish he never searched through those financial records. If you're watching this right now, please subscribe and let me know what city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. Also download your ebook titled Suspense and Family Drama Short Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. My name is Loretta Jean Franklin. I'm 62 years old, and I've spent every ounce of my strength building the life I have today. Most people see a modest brick house on the east side of Atlanta and an old Toyota in the driveway. What they don't see are the midnight shifts, the missed holidays, and the tears I shed raising my son alone after my husband died. I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, where I met my Leonard, a mechanic with hands strong enough to fix any engine but gentle enough to wipe away my tears. We didn't have much, but we had love. When our son Tyrone was born, I thought our little family was complete. I never imagined my biggest heartbreak wouldn't come from losing my husband, but from the son I raised with my whole heart. The morning Tyrone and his wife Nia pulled into my driveway in their shiny black SUV, something felt wrong. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes. They weren't carrying flowers or food like normal visitors, just designer bags and calculating looks. I invited them in anyway, hoping I was wrong about the purpose of their visit. I wasn't. What happened next would shake our family to its core. I never planned to be a night shift nurse. But those overnight hours paid better, and every extra dollar mattered for us. I was the nurse who held patients' hands at 3 a.m. when their families couldn't be there. The one who worked Christmas Eve, New Year's, and every other holiday because the shift differential meant Tyrone could have new school shoes. Leonard always said I had healing hands. Those hands could bring anyone comfort, he'd tell me while massaging my sore feet after a 12-hour shift. Leonard had magic in his hands too. He could diagnose an engine problem just by listening to it sputter. His auto shop wasn't fancy, just a small place with 2 lifts and tools he'd collected over years. Customers trusted him because he never cheated anyone, even when we were behind on our mortgage. We lived paycheck to paycheck in a small 2-bedroom house with worn carpet and mismatched furniture. But our home was clean, warm, and filled with laughter. Leonard taught Tyrone how to change oil before he could ride a bike. I taught him that character matters more than possessions. We didn't have cable TV, but we had family dinners every night where we shared our days. "Money's tight," Leonard would say, "but we're rich in what counts." Then came that Tuesday morning. I'd just finished my night shift when the hospital phone rang. Leonard had collapsed at work. By the time I reached him, his beautiful heart, the one that had loved me so completely, had stopped beating. The doctors said it was a massive heart attack. No warning. No goodbye. Just gone. Tyrone was only 16. That night, I held my son as we both cried until there were no tears left. I promised him we'd be okay, though I had no idea how I'd keep that promise. Leonard had a small life insurance policy, just enough to pay for the funeral and cover 3 months of bills. After that, I was on my own with a teenage son who still needed braces, clothes, and eventually college. I took on extra shifts until my feet ached and my back screamed. I learned to live on coffee and 4 hours of sleep. Our savings account had exactly 2 purposes: emergency fund and Tyrone's education. I'd go without new clothes for years. I'd clip coupons until my fingers cramped. I'd do whatever it took. When Tyrone got accepted to college, I cried with pride. He was the first in our family to go. I sold Leonard's tools to help pay for his books. I rented out our second bedroom to a fellow nurse. I picked up weekend shifts at a nursing home on top of my hospital job. "Mom, you're working too hard," Tyrone would say when he called. "I'm fine," I'd tell him. "Just focus on your studies. Make something of yourself." And for a while, he seemed to be doing just that. His freshman year grades were good. He joined clubs. He called home every Sunday night without fail. In those moments, I felt Leonard smiling down on us, proud of the son we'd raised. But the son I raised with my whole heart was about to become my greatest heartbreak. The change in Tyrone didn't happen overnight. It was like watching a photograph slowly fade. You don't notice day by day, but suddenly you look up and barely recognize what you're seeing. His sophomore year, he started talking about how the system was rigged against regular people. How his friends who didn't go to college were making money in business ventures that he never quite explained. His calls home became shorter, less frequent. When he came home that summer, he arrived with new clothes, a fancy watch, and an attitude I didn't recognize. "College is just a way to keep people in debt," he told me over dinner. "My buddy Greg dropped out and he's already making 6 figures. Education is never wasted," I replied. "Your father would have wanted." "Dad's not here," he snapped. The coldness in his voice made me flinch. He switched majors 3 times in the next 2 years. Philosophy to business to communications. Each time with a new explanation about finding his path. Meanwhile, his grades slipped. He started calling more often, not to check on me, but to ask for extra help with rent or car repairs. Then came Nia. The first time Tyrone brought her home, I tried to keep an open mind. She was beautiful with her long braids and designer jeans. But something in her eyes calculated everything around her, assigning dollar values instead of memories. "This is your house?" she asked, looking around my living room with barely disguised disappointment. "It's cozy." That night, she talked about her brand-influencing career on social media, though she never mentioned having actual sponsors. She showed me her fake nails that cost more than my weekly groceries and complained about having to stay in our quaint town for the weekend. After they left, I sat in Leonard's old chair and wondered if I was being too judgmental. Maybe this generation just had different values. Maybe I needed to adapt. 6 months later, Tyrone dropped out of college with 1 semester left. He and Nia got married in a ceremony I could barely afford to attend, though I emptied my personal savings to give them a generous wedding gift. "We're entrepreneurs, Mom," he explained when I asked about their plans. "We're building our brand." What they were actually building was debt. Their apartment was filled with expensive furniture bought on credit. Nia drove a leased car she couldn't afford. Tyrone bounced between sales jobs, always quitting because his bosses didn't recognize his potential. And like clockwork, they'd call me when rent was due. "It's just a temporary setback," he'd say. "We've got big plans coming together," she'd add. "Just need a little help this month, Mom." At first, I gave what I could, $200 here, $500 there. I was still working those double shifts, still living frugally. Each time they promised it was the last time. It never was. After 3 years of this pattern, I finally said no. "Mom, we're going to be evicted," Tyrone pleaded over the phone. "I don't have it, Tyrone. I'm tapping into my retirement just to help you. You always have a little saved. Dad would have wanted you to help family." That last line, using Leonard's memory against me, broke something inside. "Your father would have wanted you to stand on your own 2 feet, I said quietly. "No more money, Tyrone. It's time you figured this out yourself." The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the click of him hanging up. After that, our relationship changed. They'd visit on holidays with strained smiles, always with an eye on what they could take home. Leftovers, household items, or cash they'd try to borrow before leaving. They'd ignore my calls for months, then suddenly appear when they needed something. I mourned the son I thought I'd raised. But while they thought I was just scraping by, I was quietly building something they couldn't imagine. At 45, while Tyrone was asking for his third loan that year, I made a decision that would change everything. I enrolled in a part-time program to become a nurse practitioner. For 3 grueling years, I worked full shifts and then studied until my eyes burned. My dining table disappeared under textbooks and notes. "You're too old to go back to school," one colleague remarked. "Watch me," I replied. The day I passed my certification exam, I stood at Leonard's grave and whispered, "We did it, honey." Because it felt like he'd been pushing me forward every step of the way. My new credentials doubled my salary overnight. But I kept living in the same house, driving the same Toyota, wearing the same sensible shoes. The only difference was that now, every extra dollar went into carefully researched investments instead of Tyrone's pocket. At 52, an opportunity fell into my lap. 2 other nurses and I were complaining about the poor quality of elder care facilities in our area. "We could do better," I said, half joking. A week later, we were writing a business plan. We started small, just the 3 of us providing premium in-home nursing care for elderly clients who wanted to age in place rather than move to facilities. We hired carefully, trained thoroughly, and built a reputation for compassion and excellence. Word spread. Doctors started referring their wealthiest patients to us. Families sought us out. Within 5 years, we had 30 employees and a waiting list. When I turned 60, a larger healthcare company approached us with an offer to buy our business. After careful negotiation, I walked away with a check that took my breath away. Combined with my pension, savings, and investments that had quietly grown over the years, I was worth over $1.4 million. But I kept it quiet. Not out of shame, but out of wisdom. I knew what would happen if certain people found out. I paid off my mortgage, set up a solid retirement fund, and donated to nursing scholarships at the local community college. I finally took a vacation to see the Grand Canyon, something Leonard and I had always dreamed of doing together. I kept working part-time because I loved my patients, not because I needed the money. My life was comfortable, peaceful, and secure, until the evening my doorbell rang. Clarice from next door stood on my porch with an unusual expression. She worked at the county clerk's office and had been my neighbor for 15 years. "Loretta," she said, fidgeting with her purse strap, "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but someone pulled your property records today." My stomach tightened. "Who?" "Your son, Tyrone. He requested your deed information and tax assessment. It's all public record, but—" Her voice trailed off. I thanked her and closed the door, my hand trembling slightly. Property records would show my house was paid off and worth considerably more than what Tyrone probably assumed. Tax records might indicate my financial status. 3 days later, my phone rang. Tyrone's number flashed on the screen. "Hey, Mom." His voice was cheerful, too cheerful. "Nia and I were thinking, it's been too long. We want to come visit this weekend. Quality time, you know." They hadn't wanted quality time in over 2 years. The last time they visited was when their car needed expensive repairs. "That sounds nice," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "When will you arrive?" "Friday evening," he said. "We can't wait to see you." After hanging up, I sat in Leonard's chair and closed my eyes. I knew exactly what was coming, and I had exactly 4 days to prepare for it. Friday evening arrived with dark clouds threatening rain, fitting for what was about to unfold. I'd spent the day preparing a nice meal, Tyrone's favorite pot roast, sweet potato casserole, and peach cobbler for dessert. Not because I was naive, but because I wanted to remember who we were before money came between us. Their SUV pulled into my driveway at exactly 6. I watched through the window as Tyrone adjusted his gold watch and Nia checked her makeup in the visor mirror before they stepped out. She carried a designer purse that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Neither brought a hostess gift, not even a token bottle of wine or flowers. "Mom." Tyrone's voice boomed with exaggerated enthusiasm as I opened the door. His hug felt performative, too tight and too brief. Nia air-kissed near my cheek, careful not to smudge her makeup. "The house looks the same," she said, her eyes scanning my living room like an appraiser. "Why would it change?" I asked with a smile. "I'm comfortable here." What followed was the strangest house tour I never offered. Tyrone wandered from room to room, opening closet doors, checking the view from windows, running his hand along countertops. "The foundation's still solid?" he asked, as if suddenly concerned about structural engineering. "The guest bathroom could use updating," Nia called from down the hall. I let them explore while I finished dinner preparations, my stomach tightening with each casual remark about wasted space and outdated fixtures. They weren't seeing my home, they were assessing their potential inheritance. Dinner began with shallow pleasantries. Questions about neighbors they'd never cared about before, comments about Atlanta's real estate market, observations about my quiet lifestyle. I answered calmly while watching Tyrone's eyes dart to the china cabinet, the artwork, mentally tallying values. Finally, over dessert, he cleared his throat. "Mom, we need to talk about your finances." The room seemed to still. I set my fork down and folded my hands in my lap. "What about my finances, Tyrone?" He exchanged a glance with Nia, who nodded slightly. "We know about your money, Mom. The business sale. Your investments. All of it." I didn't respond immediately, just let the silence stretch between us. "Public records show this house is paid off and worth at least $400,000, he continued. "And we know you got over $1 million from selling your share of that elder care business." "You've been researching me," I stated flatly. Nia leaned forward, her bracelets clinking against the table. "We're family, Loretta. Family shouldn't keep secrets like that from each other." "It's not a secret. It's my private business." Tyrone's expression hardened slightly. "While you've been sitting on all this wealth, Nia and I have been struggling. We're trying to start a family, buy a house, build our future." "I worked for 40 years to build my future," I replied. "I'm still working." "That's the thing, Mom. You don't need to anymore. You don't need this big house for just yourself. You don't need all that money just sitting there." I felt my chest tighten. "What exactly are you suggesting, Tyrone?" He reached for Nia's hand, a united front. "We think it's fair that you give us half of your assets. And we'd like you to sign the house over to us. You could move into a nice retirement community, and we'd take care of everything." The audacity of it struck me speechless for a moment. My son was asking me to give up my home, the home where I'd raised him, where every corner held memories of Leonard, and hand over half my life's work. Not because I was ill or unable to manage, but simply because he wanted it. "Half my money and my house," I repeated slowly, making sure I understood. "It's not like you need it all," Nia added. "And we're family." I looked at my son, truly looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing Tyrone's face. "No," I said quietly. His eyebrows shot up. "No." "No," I repeated, firmer this time. "This is my home. My money. Earned through decades of hard work while you were dropping out of college and jumping between jobs." Tyrone's face darkened. "That's not fair." "Neither is asking me to give up my home and life savings because you feel entitled to them." Nia's smile vanished. "You're being selfish." "Selfish?" I felt heat rising in my cheeks. I raised you, Tyrone. Put you through college. Helped you whenever you asked. That was love, not an investment with expected returns. Tyrone pushed his chair back roughly. You got lucky with that business deal. It's not like you earned that money through hard work. The injustice of that statement burned like a physical pain. Every dollar I have was earned through shifts so long I couldn't feel my feet. Through years of study while you were partying in college. Through building a business from nothing while you were asking me for rent money. We're your family, he insisted, his voice rising. You're supposed to help us. I've been helping you your entire life, I replied, my voice breaking slightly. But I won't let you take everything I've built. Nia stood up, tossing her napkin onto her half-eaten dessert. I told you this was a waste of time. She's always been stingy. I rose to my feet, drawing myself to my full height. You can sleep in the guest room tonight if you'd like. But we're done discussing my finances. Tyrone stared at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. This isn't over, Mom. You'll regret being so selfish. I met his gaze steadily. The only thing I regret is that somewhere along the way, you forgot the values your father and I taught you. What they did next crossed a line I never thought my own flesh and blood would cross. I woke the next morning to unusual sounds coming from down the hall. At first, I thought Tyrone and Nia were packing to leave, but as I approached my home office, my blood ran cold. Nia was seated at my desk, rifling through my filing cabinet. Tyrone stood by the bookshelf, pulling out books and checking behind them. My mail, including bank statements, lay spread across the table. What are you doing? My voice came out sharper than I'd ever spoken to my son. Neither jumped or looked guilty. That's what shocked me most. They felt entitled to invade my privacy. Just trying to understand the full picture, Tyrone said casually, as if breaking into my personal files was perfectly reasonable. Nia didn't even look up. You should really go digital with these records. So much paper. Get out of my office. Now. I'd never used that tone with them before. The one I reserved for doctors who ignored their patients' pain. Tyrone started to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. I pointed to the door. Pack your things and leave my house within the hour. Mom, you're overreacting. Within the hour. They left in a flurry of slammed doors and muttered accusations. Tyrone's parting words hung in the air like a threat. You'll hear from us. This isn't over. I spent the day checking my files, changing my online banking passwords, and trying to calm my shaking hands. I'd known they were desperate, but this level of betrayal cut to the bone. 2 weeks passed in uneasy silence. No calls, no texts. I began to hope they'd given up their scheme. Then came the certified letter. I recognized the law firm name embossed on the envelope, Gordon, Payne and Associates. My fingers trembled as I tore it open, but nothing could have prepared me for what I read. Tyrone and Nia were challenging the ownership of my home, claiming Tyrone had a beneficial interest since he had supposedly contributed financially over the years. But that wasn't the worst part. They had filed a petition claiming I was mentally unfit to handle my own finances and requested to be appointed as conservators over my estate. The papers blurred as tears filled my eyes. They were trying to declare me incompetent, to take legal control of everything I owned while I was still alive and well. I called my neighbor Rachel, a retired paralegal. She arrived within minutes, read the papers, and her face hardened. This is predatory, Loretta. Pure and simple. Can they do this? Take my house? Control my money? She squeezed my hand. Not if we fight back. And you need to fight back hard. The next morning, I met with Harold Claiborne, a sharp-eyed attorney in his 70s who specialized in elder law. His office walls were lined with law books and family photos. He reviewed my documents, then removed his reading glasses with deliberate calm. "Mrs. Franklin, I've seen this kind of case before. Adult children who feel entitled to their parents' assets often try to use the legal system as a weapon. Can they win?" My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. "Not on the merits, no. But they're hoping you'll be too afraid or embarrassed to fight. That you'll settle to avoid the pain of a public battle." He leaned forward, his eyes kind but determined. "Are you willing to fight your son in court?" The question knocked the wind from me. Fight my own child in court? The baby I'd nursed, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd consoled when his father died? Then I remembered Tyrone going through my desk drawers, Nia spreading my bank statements across the table, the cold calculation in their eyes as they demanded half of everything I owned. "Yes," I said, my voice stronger now. "I'm willing to fight." The day of the hearing arrived with crisp autumn air and golden leaves that reminded me too much of happier times. Family apple-picking trips when Tyrone was small. I wore Leonard's favorite blue dress and a single strand of pearls he'd given me for our 20th anniversary. Not to impress anyone, but to feel his strength with me. Courtroom C was smaller than I expected, with wood-paneled walls and uncomfortable benches. My attorney, Mr. Claiborne, moved with the quiet confidence of someone who'd argued in these rooms for decades. We sat at one table, while at another, Tyrone and Nia whispered with a younger attorney whose suit looked more expensive than his experience warranted. Nia wore a white pantsuit that made her look like she was auditioning for a reality show about wealthy housewives. Tyrone had a new haircut and a tie I'd never seen. They didn't look at me directly, but I felt their sideways glances assessing my appearance, perhaps hoping I'd look confused or frail. Judge Marilyn Watkins entered, a black woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes that missed nothing. After the formalities, Tyrone's attorney stood. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of an elderly woman who, while once capable, is now making financial decisions that harm her family's interests. Mrs. Franklin has isolated herself, refuses financial transparency with her only son, and has shown erratic judgment in her spending habits." I clenched my fists under the table as he continued fabricating a portrait of me as a confused old woman being taken advantage of by outside influences. According to him, I was spending recklessly, false, had shown signs of memory loss, false, and had always intended for Tyrone to inherit my home while I was still alive, absurdly false. "Tyrone Franklin has always contributed to this family home," he claimed. "He helped maintain the property, contributed financially during hard times, and has a legitimate expectation of occupancy rights." Mr. Claiborne didn't interrupt, just took careful notes and occasionally squeezed my arm reassuringly. When their attorney finally finished, Judge Watkins turned to us. "Mr. Claiborne, your response?" My attorney stood slowly. "Your Honor, we have a saying in the South, don't try to teach your grandmother to suck eggs. Mrs. Franklin isn't just competent, she's highly accomplished." He presented my nursing credentials, business ownership documents, and financial statements showing prudent management. Then he called my doctor, who testified that my recent physical and cognitive assessments showed I was in excellent health with no signs of impairment. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the witness stand with my head high. After being sworn in, I looked directly at Judge Watkins, not at my son. "Mrs. Franklin, please tell the court about your financial management." I told the simple truth, about working double shifts, about becoming a nurse practitioner at 45, about building a business while still caring for patients, about investments made with careful research. I explained how Tyrone had stopped contributing to anything years ago, how he actually came to me for money repeatedly. "Did you ever promise your son that he would have your house while you're still living?" Mr. Claiborne asked. "Never, I stated firmly. My late husband and I always intended for Tyrone to inherit after both our deaths, but we never promised our home to him during our lifetimes. When Tyrone's attorney cross-examined me, he tried to twist my words, to make me appear confused about dates and amounts. I corrected him politely each time. When he suggested I'd promised Tyrone financial support whenever needed, I looked directly at my son for the first time. I promised to love him unconditionally. I never promised to fund irresponsibility indefinitely. By the time all evidence was presented, including bank records showing Tyrone had never contributed to my mortgage or maintenance, the mood in the courtroom had shifted. Judge Watkins reviewed the final documents, then looked up with an expression that sent relief flooding through me. "I'm dismissing this petition with prejudice," she announced. "Mrs. Franklin has demonstrated clear competence and sound financial judgment. The claims regarding property rights are similarly without merit." Then she did something unexpected. She addressed Tyrone directly. "Mr. Franklin, I want to be very clear. If you file another frivolous claim against your mother, she would be within her rights to seek a restraining order and remove you from any future inheritance. I strongly suggest you reflect on your actions today." Tyrone's face flushed dark red. Nia stared straight ahead, her jaw tight. As we gathered our papers, Mr. Claiborne whispered, "Congratulations, Loretta. It's over." But it wasn't. The fight was over, but the wound remained. And the real shock came 3 days after the trial, when I opened my mailbox to find a handwritten note from Tyrone. The note was brief. "I'm sorry, Mom. Can we talk?" I didn't call him right away. Instead, I met again with Mr. Claiborne and laid out a plan that had been forming in my mind since the courtroom. "I want to protect what I've built," I explained. "Not just from Tyrone and Nia, but from any future attempts." With his guidance, I established an irrevocable trust managed by a reputable firm. I moved 90% of my assets into it, including the house. The terms were specific. I would maintain full use of my property during my lifetime. Upon my death, Tyrone would receive a modest lump sum, enough to help but not enough to squander. The remainder would be split between nursing scholarships and a charity supporting families of heart attack victims. "Are you sure about this?" Mr. Claiborne asked as I signed the documents. "It's difficult to undo once established." I thought about Tyrone's face in court, the calculation behind his eyes. "I'm sure." Once everything was finalized, I had my lawyer send Tyrone a letter explaining the changes to my estate plan. No emotion, just facts, the trust, the limited inheritance, the reasons why. His reaction was exactly what I'd expected. My phone rang within an hour of his receiving the letter. "How could you?" he shouted, not even bothering with hello. "This is vindictive." "It's protection," I replied calmly. "You tried to take my house and control my money. Actions have consequences." "I'll fight this," he threatened. "I'll tell everyone what you've done." "Tell them what?" "That your mother protected herself after you tried to declare her incompetent?" "That doesn't make me look bad, Tyrone." "Nia says we should expose you on social media. Show everyone how you've turned your back on family." I felt a deep sadness at how little he understood. "I never turned my back on you. You tried to take what wasn't yours to take." After that call, I blocked his number. Not forever, just for 3 months. I needed peace to heal from the betrayal, to rebuild my sense of security in my own home. During that time, something shifted. I heard through my church friend Doreen that Nia had left Tyrone. Apparently, once the prospect of my money disappeared, so did her interest in the marriage. Doreen also mentioned that Tyrone had lost his job at the car dealership. He was, for perhaps the first time, truly on his own. When I finally unblocked his number, I didn't call him. I figured the ball was in his court. 2 weeks later, as I was leaving Sunday service, I spotted him sitting alone in the back pew. He looked different, thinner, less polished, his designer clothes replaced by a simple button-down shirt that needed ironing. When our eyes met, he didn't approach immediately. Instead, he waited until most congregants had filed out. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice lacking its usual bravado. "Thank you for unblocking my number." We sat in the empty church, sunlight streaming through stained glass, casting colored patterns on the worn wooden pews. "Nia left," he said finally. "Said she didn't sign up for a husband with no prospects." I didn't say, "I told you so." There was no satisfaction in his pain. "I've been working at Uncle Ray's garage," he continued. "Not what I planned, but it's honest work. Makes me feel close to Dad somehow." Something in my chest loosened slightly at that. "I was wrong," he said, looking down at his hands that resembled Leonard's. "Not just about the court case. About everything. About what matters." "Tyrone." "Please let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I got lost somewhere along the way. Started thinking I deserved things I hadn't earned. Started resenting you for having what I wanted without doing the work to get it." He wiped his eyes. "I'm ashamed of what I did." I studied my son's face, the face I'd loved from his first breath. I saw genuine remorse there, but I'd seen convincing performances before. "I still love you," I told him truthfully. "But forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. Trust has to be earned, not demanded." "I understand," he nodded. "I don't expect you to change the trust. Or to believe me right away. I just want a chance to be your son again. The right way." We agreed to small steps. Sunday dinners. Phone calls during the week. No discussions of money or property. No requests for help unless it was truly an emergency. "I can't promise I'll never make mistakes again," he said as we parted. "But I promise to remember who raised me. And what that should mean." It's been a year now. Tyrone works full-time at my brother's garage, learning the trade his father loved. He rents a small apartment nearby and visits every Sunday for dinner. The trust remains unchanged, a boundary that protects us both. Through this painful journey, I've learned that even the deepest love must have limits. Your hard work is your legacy, not a debt owed to anyone, even family. When money enters relationships, it reveals hearts clearly, both others and your own. And while forgiveness opens doors, trust must be earned step by careful step. If you've stayed with me until the end, please subscribe and share where you're watching from. Your stories matter too. Lastly, download your ebook titled Suspense and Family Drama Short Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment.